Hello, this is your host, Austin Hopkins, and welcome to the Introvert Leader Podcast. All right, welcome to episode 23. This one's all about gossip, folks, all about office gossip. So excited to jump into this topic in just a couple minutes. But before we do that, here's what I've been into recently. I have been listening to an artist named Kali Uchis. I'm going to butcher the name, of course, but she is kind of a soul R&B artist who has been around for, I'd say, the last 10 years or so. But I really enjoy her music. She speaks Spanish in a lot of her songs and blends that with English really perfectly, in my opinion. And the song that I've been listening to of hers recently is called Moonlight. Turn that on, put it in the car, turn up the volume. You're going to enjoy it. And it's just going to set the mood. It's going to be a really, really good vibe, as they say. Moving on. So YouTube content. This one's kind of a niche one, but I kind of like all things minimalism and tech and things like that. So there is this channel called Accessorize Me, spelled with 2 S's in the middle. And it's basically this guy who shows you all the newest minimalist tech, accessories. And it's funny enough, I've actually bought a ton of stuff based on his recommendations. So I bought some of my favorite kind of crossbody bags, some of my favorite kind of blackout everyday carry stuff. So really, really enjoy his stuff. He's kind of funny as well. So if you're looking for some recommendations of new tech for maybe a husband or for someone who's really into minimalism, definitely check out his channel. All right, moving on. I recently watched a movie that you have to check out called The Last Rider. It's on Hulu, and it's about an American cyclist named Greg LeMond. So Greg LeMond was the first American to ever win the Tour de France. So some of you guys know I'm super into cycling and love all that kind of stuff. So I had to check this movie out, and it kind of blew my mind how incredible this guy was. So Greg LeMond, against all odds, won the Tour de France in the 80s. And then suffered a massive, massive injury, a shotgun shot, actually, believe it or not. He was shot with a shotgun. And a couple of years later, he actually came back and won the Tour de France again. This was unprecedented. This has never happened before. And I really, really enjoyed the movie. It really kind of let me into the mindset of a guy like this, a guy who really had a goal, pursued that goal, with all intensity, never gave up, never wavered, went through difficult times though, right? I mean, being shot, I can't even imagine what that would be like, but came back and won it again. So if you're looking for a good documentary, if you're interested in cycling or just anything sports related in general, I think you're going to enjoy it. And again, it's on Hulu and it's called The Last Rider. Okay, moving on. I want to wrap up with a little quote to kind of set the scene for today. So here's the quote, guys. It's by Eleanor Roosevelt, and it goes like this. Great minds discuss ideas, average minds discuss events, and small minds discuss people. I like that quote. I really like that one. And I think it's so simple, but it's also incredibly accurate. And so I really think it kind of ties in perfectly what we're going to be talking about today, which is gossip. But before we jump into that, I want to hit you with a little listener Q&A. All right, so the question comes from Scott in Michigan, and Scott wants to know, what do I do if my boss is stealing credit for my work? All right, Scott, this one is a shitty situation, and I'm sorry that you're kind of going through that, but really, I see there's 2 options when faced with a situation like this. First, you can ignore it. You can kind of hope it goes away. I'll be honest with you, this rarely works, if ever. Maybe I've seen it once or twice where someone kind of realizes they're stealing credit and then wises up. Again, though, usually not going to work. The second option, which is the option I really think you should take, is you can bring it to their attention respectfully. So ask them to have a convo and respectfully chat with them about what's going on. Give them a chance to understand that they're even doing it, because at the end of the day, they might not even know that they're stealing credit for your work. They may just think it's their idea. So respectfully let them know what's going on, how that's kind of been bothering you, and then wait to see if they'll change. If they don't change, then have that conversation again and keep doing that until eventually you can either come to the realization that they're not going to change and that you just need to accept it, or 2, go find a new manager. So I hope, Scott, that kind of helps, but really good question. Again, I'm sorry you're going through that, but at the end of the day, not only do I think these two solutions will work, but I also think another kind of mindset you can have during this situation is don't worry about it. If you are adding value, Scott, and if that's what you're focused on is continuously adding value throughout the company, even if your boss steals some of the credit here and there, you're going to be generating so much value and making such an impact in so many other ways that it's not going to be the end of the world. So I hope those strategies work, but always, if you need more help or you want to talk about it, I'm always here to chat about it. So also, guys, love to know any other questions you have. Don't forget to send them in to the introvertleader@gmail.com. All right, we're moving on. I want to talk about our topic today, which is gossip. So why are we even talking about gossip? And really, it's simple. You have most likely gossiped, been around gossip, or been hurt by some gossip in your career. And I believe every company, every organization has some degree of gossip. Even the most healthy cultures, there's some gossip going on. So today I really want to do is kind of break down why we gossip, why I've gossiped in the past. I want to talk about whether gossip can be good. Is there any good gossip or is it all bad? And then I want to give you a couple strategies to avoid unhealthy gossip. So let's dive in. What is gossip? Really, how I define gossip, how most psychologists define gossip is it's really the act of talking about someone or situations when they're not present. It could be talking about drama. It could be putting down people for their actions. It could be talking about office politics, inner workings. Some examples I've seen in the past are like who's sleeping with who and who's sucking at their job and who screwed up on this big project and who is doing some unethical stuff within the office. So just basically what's happening around the company. And again, it's when you're talking about those things when they're not present. So obviously you've been around gossip, you know what that looks like and what that feels like, but maybe you don't really understand what the effects of gossip are. Maybe you think that there are no effects and that it's an okay thing to gossip, right? It's kind of fun, so why not? I believe that if you are participating in unhealthy gossip, there's three things that can happen. Number one, you can hurt people, right? If you're talking about people behind their backs and you're saying things that could hurt their feelings or that could paint them in a bad light, you can hurt people's feelings. You can get people to start thinking about them in a wrong light or judging them. And I just don't think that's a good thing. So hurting people, obviously not a positive effect of gossip. Obviously, you can also hurt your reputation, right? If you go around and you're known as the gossip and you're talking shit about everyone, then people who are interacting with you are going to assume that you're also talking crap about them. So it's going to hurt your reputation. And in fact, I'll tell you a little story later on that kind of illustrates this exactly in my own life. And then the last one I think that is really important, negative effect of gossip is you can lose the trust of those people around you. Kind of ties into the reputation, but people are going to start to not trust you as much because they think that they can't be honest with you or share information that's really going on because you're going to go and tell someone else. So obviously, no bueno, the effects of gossip. We don't like it. We don't want to do it. But I'm going to tell you why I've gossiped in the past. Because I have gossiped in the past. And to be honest, there are still times where I catch myself wanting to gossip, even to this day. So there was a time where I was a big gossip. And here are some of the reasons why I gossiped in the past. One, I wanted to fit in, right? Kind of feels good to fit in, to have a connection with other people. And when other people are gossiping, it's kind of fun to join in, right? I wanted people to like me. It's another one. I thought if I shared information that was going on or if I captivated people's attentions, they were going to like me more. I think both of those kind of fit into people pleasing, but obviously not really great reasons to gossip. Another one for me was I wanted something entertaining to talk about. Dude, work is boring sometimes. It's the same thing in and out. It's repetitive, it's monotonous, and it gets boring. So sometimes you want to break up that boringness with something interesting. What's the drama going on? What's been happening within the office? Who's sleeping with who? Who's doing what? Who's not doing good at their job? That stuff can be entertaining to talk about. I mean, gosh, there's a whole industry, literally built upon this, reality TV. It's literally mostly full of gossip. The whole premise of reality TV is people talking about people without them being present. And then, I would say the last one is I probably wanted to feel better about myself. Right? I wanted to gossip. And if I was talking maybe negatively about what someone else was doing, that made myself feel better because I compared myself and thought, well, I'm not doing that. Or, I'm not sucking at their project like they are. So I don't say that those are any good reasons. In fact, they're all really shit reasons, but those are some of the reasons why I've gossiped in the past. And that's just the honest truth. So I want to move on and talk about maybe a little controversial topic around gossip. So I guess the title of this section would be, can gossip be good? And, in fact, I do think some kind of gossip is not only acceptable, but it actually might be helpful. There was a study that was done in the American Journal of Psychologists where they basically took, I think it was 400 to 600 people and put them in this environment where they were able to gossip. And they found that the folks that participated in healthy gossip, which we'll talk about in a second, actually formed better relationships. So I do think there are appropriate times to gossip, and I'll give you some examples so that you know kind of where my head is at. So here are some appropriate examples. Maybe you want to talk about a recent situation that happened within the company, right? You're not putting anyone down. You're just talking about the situation. Oh, Susie, dropped the ball on that presentation, and now because of that, we have more work this week. I mean, you're not talking any crap. You're just telling it how it is. So I think talking about recent situations, talking about company culture, the inner workings, who's got a promotion recently and who's this big initiative going to fall under, like things like that, right? You're not putting anyone down. You're just talking about stuff that's happening within the company. Team dynamics, right? That's another one. Maybe you're talking about the different dynamics within your team. Hey, this isn't going well. I wonder if we could fix it in this area. So kind of with a proactive approach to fix or improve things, to talk about those situations, I think is totally appropriate. And then I think the last one that's really comes to mind is sharing information that will help others, right? So that could be things like mistreatment or things that are going on within the company that aren't right. And if no one talks about those things, and if everyone keeps that to themselves, then people are going to feel isolated, and maybe that mistreatment's going to happen to them, or maybe they're going to be caught up in something that they could have been warned about ahead of time. So I think those are some examples where it's okay to maybe talk about gossip and talk about things that are happening in the company. Here's what I will say though. If you ever feel like you're talking about someone in a negative light, if you're judging someone, if you're putting others down, then that's not appropriate, right? It's just plain and simple. If you're putting people down, if you're judging them, if you are comparing yourself and putting them in a negative light, that's not appropriate. So obviously inappropriate examples, right? Talking crap about people, judging, complaining without action. That's another one that really bothered me. A lot of times I'd have people gossip and just talk about things that weren't going right, but they wouldn't have any solutions or any willingness to take an action. They wouldn't go talk to the person that had wronged them. They just complained, talked crap, judged, put them down. That's not appropriate. It's not going to work. And, in a moment, we'll talk about why those things are so, inappropriate and why they can hurt people and things like that. But before we do, we're going to take a quick pause. I want to give you guys a little spotlight of my new newsletter that's just coming out today. So I'm really excited about this. I've been talking about it for a couple of months now. And essentially what it was is I wanted to come up with a way to further connect with you folks that listen to the podcast, right? I'm finding that the podcast platform is awesome and that I can deliver really bite-sized, strategies and information within the, 15 to 30 minute episode length. But I'm finding that also I want to go deeper, and there's things that I want to talk about more in depth. I want to give more examples and more strategies, but because of time constraints and because I want people to stay engaged with the podcast, I don't do that. So that's why I'm really excited to announce the Introvert Leader Dispatch. So it's a new newsletter. It's completely free. Let me tell you what it looks and feels like. So number one, it's coming out once a month. So you're not getting one every week. It's not going to be flooded your inbox where you're just getting annoyed with this email that's coming to you too frequently. What else should you know? It's delivered right to your inbox. It's clear. It's concise. It's going to mimic in a lot of ways the vibe and the style of the podcast. My hope is that if you're listening to the podcast, you know that I create this and I share this information because I want to help those around me. That's really my goal. So that's the same thing for this newsletter. I want to help people, but I also want to have some fun with it. So what is it going to include? It's going to include podcast episode deep dive. So every month, I'm going to break down the 2 previous episodes that I just covered in more detail. I'm going to give you more strategies, more things you can take back to your career to find success. It's also going to include a virtual book club. So I'm a big reader. I read lots of books. I love talking about the books that I read. And I want to start having having people join with me. So whether it's a career development book, a personal development, a leadership book, business strategy, you name it, we're going to start going through books. We're going to break down what I'm learning, and hopefully you guys are going to follow along and pick up those books as well. Because I don't know about you, but the times that I've been in book clubs with others, it's really fun. You're more engaged in what you're reading, and you also retain what you read quite a bit more because you're talking about it. Another really fun part of the newsletter is I'm going to be breaking down music and coffee, two of my biggest passions. I'm absolutely obsessed with music. In fact, I just got my Spotify Unwrapped, where they break down my listening habits over the year. And I hate to admit it, but I listen to a lot of music. And it's exciting to me to talk about music and talk about the music that I'm listening to, that I'm finding, why I like the music, introducing new artists. So really excited to break that down. As well with coffee. I love talking about coffee, preparation, the best coffee, the best brewing methods. I'm going to be breaking down all the different ways that I love coffee. And I'm guessing you're probably a coffee drinker. Maybe you're a tea drinker. And if so, I'm judging you a little bit for being a tea drinker. I like tea as well, but you really need to get onto the coffee train. But moving on, the last thing I'll do as well is kind of a listener reader Q&A. So again, taking questions from you guys about the things you want to know about. What are the questions you always wish you could ask your boss? What are the questions that you want to know that you can find out information to get you further along in your career? So that's what the podcast newsletter companion is going to be. And it's going to be really simple, concise, clear. So why should you subscribe? Number one, you want to learn more about the topics I cover in the podcast. Maybe you've heard my previous episode of leading an effective presentation, but you felt like you didn't learn enough and you wanted to learn more. Well, great. I'll be breaking that down. Or maybe you really just like coffee and music. You love talking about coffee. You love talking about music. You're going to get a lot of fun and value out of the topics that I cover in both of those. Maybe you want to get to know more about me. Maybe you find that I'm interesting. I mean, I don't know if my wife would say that I'm all that interesting, but there's some of you out there who might think that there's more that you want to learn about me. Well, great. I'm going to be sharing more about my dogs, my hobbies, the things I'm into, and it'll be a cool opportunity to kind of share more about my personal side of my life. And the last reason that you might want to subscribe is you like free things that give you value. I know for me, I kind of love the things that are completely free, but I get value out of. So this is going to be jam-packed, stuffed full of value. That's my whole goal, is value, value, value. I want you to read the 5-minute newsletter, the 2-minute newsletter, come away thinking, wow, I learned something new, or wow, that was interesting. So I'll include a free link to subscribe in the notes. But again, really, really excited to launch that. It's live today. The first edition of the Introvert Leader Dispatch is out. Check it out. Let me know what you think. And let's get it started, folks. All right, back to the episode. So I want to move on and talk about a couple of different ways that you can stop gossiping. So I'm going to be honest with you. You're going to have the urge to gossip. It's probably not going to go away completely ever. Even if you never gossip starting today for the rest of your life, you are going to be around situations that are going to be maybe tempting to gossip. So I'm going to tell you the 4 different things that I have done that worked to stop gossiping. And then after that, I'm going to tell you about a really super embarrassing moment around gossiping. So here are the 4 different ways. Number 1 is acknowledge the urge when it happens. The first thing you got to do is you got to be able to acknowledge when you have the urge. If you just jump into gossip as soon as you get the urge, you're not giving yourself a chance to label the feeling that you're feeling. So take a second when you start feeling like you want to gossip, when someone draws you into that conversation, acknowledge, hey, wait, this might be a gossip situation. So that's number 1. Number 2, remember the consequences of gossip. And guys, there are consequences. You're going to lose trust of the people around you. You're going to hurt your reputation. And most of all, you're going to hurt people. And that's not a good thing. The next thing is separate yourself from people that are big gossipers. Now, I'm not talking about the people that gossip here and there that maybe haven't figured out that it's a bad thing. I'm talking about the people that are well known as huge gossips, and that's all they do. There's people that I know that their entire existence from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. working at their job is talking about other people all the time, every day, throughout the day. Separate yourself from those people. That might be hard. You might enjoy that relationship, but if they're not going to change and you're not wanting to be around that, you got to separate yourself. Another one you can do is change the convo when gossip starts up. So I was a leader of a team, right? And there was a lot of times where people on my team would start gossiping. And I really felt as the leader, I had to set the tone. I had to be the one that would move us on to more healthy conversations when that popped up. So when I would see people start gossiping and talking crap about people, I would try to change the subject. Or I would say, hey, you know what? We really don't know everything that's going on that side. I'm sure they'll figure it out. Or, hey, man, that sucks that that's going on, but not really our problem, right? And just little comments like that, change the convo, change it to something else, because it usually takes one person to kind of step up and do that. A lot of times people, when they're around gossiping, more people come, they just enjoy it, and it kind of attracts more of that kind of stuff. So you got to change the convo when it comes up. So try one of those 4 things, acknowledge it when it happens, remember the consequences of gossip, separate yourself from people that do it, or just change the convo. Those are really the 4 strategies that have really worked for me. And I've tried that over the last, I would say, 5 to 6 years. So what I want to do now is tell you about an embarrassing story. And so this takes place about 5 or 6 years ago. I had just got a big promotion at work, and I would be tasked with turning around this kind of struggling retail location. I was working at a major bank at the time. And I remember I was really excited for my first day at that new location, and I was getting all my stuff ready to go and kind of coming up with plans. And I remember walking in on my first day, and I started introducing myself to the team. I had, I guess, I want to say maybe 15 people or so that were working at this location that were going to be reporting to me. So I kind of one by one went around and introduced myself, and everyone was super nice and welcoming, and the day was going well. And I remember I kind of saved my chat with the assistant manager towards kind of the end of the day. And so, that time came, and I went up to the assistant manager, and at some point I sat down with her, and kind of right as we sat down, she looked at me and said, "I've heard about you." And I kind of looked at her with a little confusion and a smile, kind of expected her to share something nice that she heard about me, like, "Oh, I heard you're a great leader," or, "Oh, I heard you're really good at sales." But instead she said, "Yeah, I heard you're actually quite the big gossiper." And I looked at her and my heart sank. I thought, what the heck just happened? I just got called out, and I was so embarrassed. She's like, "Yeah, I've heard that you love to gossip. Yeah, everybody kind of knows that about you." And someone I had never met had already formed this negative opinion of me based on my past actions. Guys, I felt so embarrassed. I was like, holy crap, what is going on here? How did I let this happen? I kind of shrugged it off and laughed, because obviously it's my first day and I'm not trying to get into it with my assistant manager. And she wasn't doing anything inappropriate. She was just sharing what she had known about me. I tried to finish the day with a positive mindset as best as I could, but all I could think about was my reputation and how I screwed it up. And, for me, my reputation was important. I wanted to have a reputation of someone that was kind, that added value, that was a hard worker, that was a good leader. And this was a negative thing about my reputation. I hadn't really faced that before. So, I went home and obviously told, my wife, and kind of felt sorry for myself. But over the next few weeks, I just kept thinking about my tendency to gossip, and I would notice these situations at work where it would just naturally happen. And I would start to try to think about what it would look like if I changed this, and what if I stopped gossiping. So a few weeks later, I woke up and I basically made the decision. I told myself that I was going to change this reputation, that this is not what I want it to be about. This is not who I wanted to be known as. So from that day on, once I made that conscious effort to not initiate gossip and excuse myself when others are gossiping, things started getting better. Now, I'm going to be brutally honest with you. It was one of the hardest things to stop gossiping, because I enjoyed it. I enjoyed talking about what was going on. I wanted people to like me, right? I've dealt with people pleasing. And so I wanted people to like me, and I wanted to fit in. And it wasn't easy, and it took time. And did I make mistakes? Oh my gosh, of course I did. And did I catch myself gossiping? Absolutely. But over time, I made that shift, and I'm happy to report that I changed that reputation. And I'll forever be really grateful for that relationships with my assistant manager. Her name is Alex. We're still in contact today. She's one of my favorite people. And I just really, really appreciated her willingness to be honest with me, even though it could have hurt her, her job, right? If I was a poor leader, I could have held that against her, but I really appreciated her telling me that. And I really kind of appreciate that journey I went through of growing past gossiping. Now, I want to tell you, brutally honest, do I still gossip sometimes? Yeah, there's still times where I catch myself gossiping. Do I talk crap about people and I'm judging them and putting them down? No, it's not that. But there are times where I get in these conversations where I know, hey, this isn't healthy, Austin. I probably need to excuse myself. So I constantly have to catch myself in those moments. And that's probably what it's going to be for you. If you figure out that you don't want to participate in gossip anymore, and trust me, if you make that decision, it's the right one, it's going to be a little hard. And it's going to take some dedication. Maybe you ask your wife, your spouse, your brother, your sister, your friend to keep you accountable and hold you accountable. Maybe you get an accountability partner at work of someone who else wants to stop gossiping. But these are the things that are going to help. And I tell you this story not to scare you about the consequences of gossip, but more importantly, to show you that you can change anything about yourself if it's important. And that's the truth. If there's something that's going on in your career right now, if there's part of your reputation that you don't like, you don't have to just accept that about yourself. I don't care if you're 20 years old. I don't care if you're 80 years old. You have complete control and individual responsibility. So if there's something going on that you want to change, if you want to stop gossiping, try a couple of those things and you're going to feel better. You're going to grow as a person, and the people around you are going to notice that difference, and they're going to want to follow you, and your influence is going to continue to grow. So I'm hoping you got a couple fun strategies. You learned a little bit about gossip. I want to wrap up by giving you a challenge. So this week, I want you to catch yourself when you feel the urge to gossip. Stop yourself, change the subject, excuse yourself from the convo, find something nice to say about the person, whatever it is. Catch yourself this week, acknowledge it, because that's the first step. Okay, before we wrap up, 2 things I need from you. Number 1, please subscribe to the new newsletter. I put a lot of work into it. I got a ton of feedback. I'm really confident you're going to get a ton of value out of it. So the link will be in the description of the podcast episode today. And the second thing I ask is send me your questions. You have some career questions. I know you do. I know there's something that you're struggling with that you haven't asked someone that you want to get an answer to. Send it to me. I'd love to answer it. I'd love to cover it on the podcast and see if I can add some value and give you some information that you want completely free of charge that's tailored right to you. So thank you so much for listening. Make it a great day. This has been the Introvert Leader Podcast. Subscribe for new episodes every other Wednesday.